think Heraclitus said something like, in translation, the soul is so deep that no one has yet... he says the soul... No one has yet reached the bottom of the soul because its logos is so deep.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Which is to say... He doesn't mean it's logic. He means...
Yeah.
He's not saying the soul is so intelligent that no one can ever...
It makes me think of Desmond when he talks about the overdetermined.
William Desmond. Yeah,
William Desmond.
Say more about the overdetermined.
Well, it's like you're saying that it's not logical, but it's still the logos. And that is what gives
Well, it is
all
logical,
meaning.
but it's not
Yeah,
just that.
I know, I'm just saying that it is that and more.
Mm-hmm.
And it is...
Which is the overdetermination part
yeah,
of it?
it's kind of like instead of this idea of the indeterminate, it like includes like the livingness of indeterminacy, but it's also like it's the good,
Right.
you know? It's like I don't know. I mean, it's unspeakable, I guess. But also can be talked about from different angles. But yeah, William Desmond in what's the one I read? Oh, the
Intimacy of...
The Intimate
being?
Universal.
Oh, the Intimate Universal.
Yeah, and he distinguishes what he means by the Intimate Universal from the universal that is emphasizing transcendence, from the universal that's emphasizing immanence, from Hegel's concrete universal, understood a certain way. I think he makes the concession that it could be more complexly, I guess, presented. Hegel could, but he at least is like, this is kind of what some people have made of it, though. And when people think of the concrete universal, so it's more than that as well. And the intimate aspect that he brings in is related to our time of intense particularity. So for him, that is, I think intimacy is related to like really the affirmation of that particular, but like in a way that doesn't kill wholeness or make abstract the particular or inconsequential or unimportant, right?
Yeah. So I often hear it said that logic doesn't care about your feelings.
Yeah.
But the logos, if it is this sort of intimate universality...
Feelings are part of the logos.
Well, the logos is not just about truth.
Yeah.
It's also about the good and the beautiful.
Well, it's like an integrated truth. Yeah.
Yeah, not just. It is truthful, certainly. But logic, as we normally understand it, is sort of like this structure that is imposed upon you. Whereas I think when Heraclitus was referring to the logos of the soul being so deep, this isn't... the soul's logos is not a... computation. It's not an algorithmic matrix. It's like a...
It's living.
It's living, so its depth is...
And, like knowing, awareness.
Yeah, it's a depth of feeling, it's a depth of insight, it's a depth of virtue. Virtue is related to like growth and life in a way, and so you talk about like the virtues of a plant or whatever, and the soul has this virtue. One of its virtues is intimacy. Right?
Yeah.
And cold logic lacks that intimacy, even while it may help us avoid making mistakes. It can't necessarily point us in the right direction in terms of how we ought to think. It can only prevent us from making fallacies. But how we ought to think is going to be... It's going to require engaging with logos in a deeper way.
Yeah.
Does Desmond talk in particular about
Well,
the logos.
what I was going to bring up in relation to what you shared of Heraclitus was in the Intimate Universal, he talks about the political, the aesthetic, and he talks about multiple aspects, but I think what I was especially thinking of was what he calls the idiotics of the Intimate Universal, and it's as I understand it, it's like related to that overdetermined character, in that the idiotics is this, it refers to this realm that precedes formation, at least precedes and begets and runs through formation or determination in any way. So like you could relate that to perception, like the way that we have perceptions of an ordered world. You could associate, I think, what he is relating idiotics to in relation to Whitehead's creativity. It's this kind of,
So how does he define
force.
like idiocy? Because it has a
Idiocy.
Sort of common way of
what
being
was
used.
it? He was etymologically tracing it back. And what was it?
Idea, right? It's related. Is it related to eidos in Greek? Or?
No,
it's not.
It's what was it? Oh gosh. Okay, let me see if I can remember. It was something like, that which is recessed. That which is like, that's the word that he uses. That is basically that is that which is withheld. And so the idiotics is like present, but it has to be basically, it's present and recessed, and it has to be brought out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is that in any way like it's repressed, or is that just a different?
No. I think
it's
he actually
recessed.
makes a distinction between that recessed in consciousness, and that's related to what determination. And just like if you think about certain morphologies of the evolution of consciousness, there's this tracing of what seems to be a centripetal deepening or individuating of consciousness in individual human beings. That experience is relative to a more immersive, I guess, undifferentiated experience. And so the determination is kind of related to something like individuated experience, that it is also at the same time cut off from the extent of the reality.
Right. Yeah.
So the idiotics is kind of like those experiences where you recognize that there's something flowing through everything that exceeds, that is like overdetermined, exceeds what we know, what we think we know about ourselves and understand, even the capacity to fully comprehend.
Right. So there's something that precedes and that, in a sense, something that our own form and that all form is given forth from and created by, and that also something that precedes form in the sense that it receives forms back, that destroys them. And so that is the over-determination of this ground.
In the book, one of my favorite parts, I think it was actually, what was it? He was talking about Orpheus. And I think of it as a very kind of Orphic thing in the sense of Orpheus being this kind of mediator between the Dionysian-like chaos and the Apollonian order, harmonic order. Orpheus still maintains a relationship with the chthonic, and so he talks about the waters and also the music. It's like this activity that can't be circumscribed or defined. like a song, like a instrumental music or something. Even the song with vocals.
And so Orpheus, or I guess Logos in the deeper sense that Heraclitus meant it, works in this way to mediate between the infinite and the finite, say, or between the transcendent and the immanent, or between that which is determinate and that which is overdetermined.
Yeah. It's like the sun shining, and it gives everything its light. And all these things on earth that are living because of the sun. But it, the sun is more than everything that it's made.
The sun,
in the sense of the as an image of the good, the overdetermined.
right?
And that's kind of related, I think, to what you were saying about, Heraclitus' quote that, what did you say, that it's so deep?
The soul is so deep that no one has, what is it? The Logos? Heraclitus' sayings are always so sort of
like koan-like.
elliptical. They're koans. No one has ever reached the bottom of the soul because its Logos is so deep.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, I think the inverse of that is the sun image.
Right. We don't see the sun, we see the light that it radiates.
Or we see what it illuminates, right?
Well, we only see anything else in the light of the sun, and we don't see the sun itself.
But we don't really see the light.
We don't
We only
see
see
the light,
the
we
light.
see what it illuminates,
Yeah.
But when we look directly at the sun, we see its radiation.
Yeah.
We don't see the sun.
Or,
I guess in another sense, the sun is like, we're inside of the sun. We're inside of its atmosphere. We're part of it.
Yeah.
But when we look toward the center of the being of which we are a part, we don't see its essence. We only sense its appearance.
Yeah, we experience the appearance. And all the cultural, what the collective conscious has us, the collective representations that we've inherited, inclines us to also think about the moon. The sun.
Well, the moon's another example of reflection and indirection and the sort of stepping down of the pureness of the source, the creative source.
I was just thinking, the fact that the moon and the sun appear as the same size in the sky. Isn't it absurd that the kind of disenchanted scientism has made the moon such a kind of, diminished in its importance to us. Apart from landing on it. See, I feel like that's part of that. Whereas the sun still, I think, maintains more of a stature. But I'm just thinking, it's just crazy that the recognition of the meaningfully ordered cosmos has just been rejected.
It's ordered but not meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. It's
standard modern scientific view of it.
But I guess, with the new sciences, without the meaningfulness of the order, it doesn't make any sense, right? So it's just a coincidence. And that people don't, and when these features of the world begin to be downplayed, people stop recognizing it unless they really look for themselves.
Well, either we have to say that it is an accident that the moon happens to, in a geocentric sense, from our perspective observing from the surface of the earth, appear to be the same size as the sun in the sky.
Yeah.
It's just an accident. But it's also as you're saying, it's
so
a profound
meaningful.
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
It's a synchronicity.
Well,
if you think about it abstractly, the physicist will say, well, the astronomer would say, we just happen to have gained the capacity to do science at just that moment in the history of the Earth-Moon relationship when it's so far away that it exactly corresponds to the apparent size in the sky of the sun, and it's only a temporary thing, and in a few million years it'll be further away and it won't look that way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it just gets explained away as chance.
Yeah.
But somehow, mythically, archetypally, like that synchronicity has shaped our consciousness of ourselves, and the history of humanity has only unfolded in the meaningful way that it has, and our symbols and our calendars and our narratives by which
the days
we understand ourselves. That's all, related to our understanding of eclipses, and so we can't separate ourselves from that mystery and observe it logically and empirically and say, well, that's just pure chance because, it wasn't that way before and it won't be that way in the future, and so we just so happens, and there's no meaning. And it seems like it's like a lot of effort to go to sever ourselves from the encompassing mystery.
It is, and it's also just so the way that is lived out in culture, I think, reveals that it's, unsound, because then there's all of these kids grow up with all this kind of magic. Lots of kids do, and then they grow up and they're like, oh, I guess it's not real, but so there's this whole aspect of the contemporary culture that is keeping things alive, but maybe in a distorted way.
Well, and there's another way of being scientific and doing science,
exactly.
I think, which
it's
is
just not predominant.
We recognize the profound, there's a history to this whole solar system and to life on Earth and stuff, and it turns out that about 5 billion years ago there was a collision between I think it was a Mars-sized body that hit the Earth, or what was the Earth.
5,000 years ago?
5 billion.
Oh.
Creationists think their whole thing is 6,000 years old, but no, this is much longer, wider, deeper time we're talking about here. And that other planetary body hit the Earth at just the right angle so as to form this pancake shape that was just molten rock, and it gradually butted off then the moon, about 1/6 the size of the Earth.
Oh.
And for millions and millions of years, the moon was so close that it created a rock tide, so that the magma, the Earth's crust, was literally pulled by the moon as it orbited around. And gradually, both bodies cooled, the moon got further away, the rock tide subsided as the gravitational effect lessened, and then there was just the water tide. Which is essential for the birth of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so even scientifically, there's this intimacy and relationship and this really improbable fine-tuning of the whole process. And of course, we could say, well, it was all an accident, and we would think it's meaningful and purposeful only because it happened to produce us, and when we look back, it all leads to us. It's like, okay, well, we just happen to be at the end of that random process.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like you're lifting yourself out of it and trying to look at it from the outside as if you're not an expression of it.
Well, that I feel like that is related to what we were talking about yesterday with the the idea that there's an evolution of consciousness, and right now the human beings are being all kind of ushered across the threshold, initiated into more subtle forms of perception, and what were you just saying?
The moon.
No, right before that.
That we were a part of it.
After that.
We try to lift ourselves out of this whole process.
Just the blocking of that we're blocked off from recognizing that. Not everybody. And, I think the fact that there are different, you could say ontological experiences today. Maybe some experiences that are more, I guess, how should I say it, truer reflections of the cosmos, if that makes sense. That experience, that connection, or wholeness, I should say. And others, especially, like, I think Barfield would call it, like, idolatrous consciousness of modernity. Most people who are conditioned by that are blocked off and either, like, nursing on the rest of materialism or experiencing, like, mental illness and addiction, or both.
Nursing, you said, on the show of materialism? Nursing, like on a bottle?
Yeah.
Or the teat?
Yeah, it's like a kind of form of dependence.
Yeah.
But it's it's past, like, infancy. So it's pathological.
It's interesting, though, the way that materialists will say to more spiritual people, like, they'll say, grow up, like, you gotta live in the real world where people die and, like, we don't have meaning given to us. And yet, in the way that you're framing it, it's the materialists that are refusing to grow up.
Yes.
To take responsibility for their freedom.
Well, I guess that sounds a bit too condemning,
Yeah.
Maybe I was being hyperbolic.
I mean to speak about materialism, not only materialists, people who identify that way. I mean, I'd want to talk to them.
Well, I guess people who are kind of
figure it out together,
and dismissive.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's also complicated.
Yeah. I'm way more curious to talk to people who identify as materialists because I want to understand.
Yes.
What is your justification for it? Because I need to learn what your criteria are for, like, coherence, because I need to know if am I justified? Like, let's talk about it.
Am I being dogmatic?
Yeah.
Am I just full of illusions and acting all high and mighty? But, I think for me, I have great sympathy for those who are skeptical, and are somehow, like, they have fidelity to their skepticism, or their critical thinking, because I've experienced that, and to a certain extent it can be debilitating when it becomes existential, that doubt. It's so I think it is related to self-consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, Schelling says that reflection, when it's engaged in as an end in itself, that mode of consciousness that severs us from reality, when it's engaged in as an end in itself, it's a spiritual sickness, he says.
Yeah.
And it cuts us off from the tree of life, of which we are a fruit.
Yes.
And we wither.
Yeah. It is maybe sin.
Yeah. It's the cutting off, the falling away, the missing the
mark.
Missing the mark, missing our, forgetting our connection. So there's an ignorance involved too, right?
Yeah.
I loved, we got approached by some, young missionaries from some local church here when we were at the park the other day.
They go, Chico State Youth Group or something.
And they wanted to talk to us about our spiritual beliefs, and it ended up being a Bible lesson, which was fun, interesting.
It was more than a Bible lesson.
Well, he explained it was
what
one of
believed.
Paul's. Was it from Romans? It was it was a line from one of Paul's letters, anyways.
But he did show us that after they asked us what we thought.
Right.
And we told them.
Yeah.
We both told them what we thought.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they told us what they thought.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They're very earnest and open to hearing what we thought.
It was sort of beautiful. Just the I should say the sincerity. I'm really touched by that.
But they had a very, I would say,
what's the
stark
punitive
view, and a view of God as a
punisher.
Father to be obeyed.
Yeah.
And
also a kind of static cosmology.
Right.
I should say cosmology. Yeah, because cosmology
The cosmos
time.
wasn't even relevant for them. It was just God and the human.
Well, it's very, exactly. It's very, I think, parental.
Uh-huh.
You can really almost imagine, like, getting punished and sent to your room for eternity.
Right. Like what is hell?
What
it's being sent to your room forever.
Yeah.
And I loved your response when they asked us what is sin, I think, what we think sin is.
Yeah.
Or what is evil, I forget which, but you said, well, it's ignorance. And I think that usually that's said to be like more the Greek view, whereas the biblical view, the Hebraic view would be
existence.
Well, sin is not ignorance so much as sin is a moral thing. It's like you have chosen to do wrong. It's not that you didn't know. You knew better.
You're bad.
You're bad.
Yeah, you're bad.
And that's so there's, I don't know that we need to, there's something in that we need to understand because it's pointing to our freedom. Whereas the Greek is saying, well, we haven't learned. Yeah. It's not our fault because we didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think the Hebraic understanding of morality is, no, you did know, and you did the selfish thing anyways.
Yeah.
You knew better. But the Christian and the biblical view tends to ignore the role of ignorance and knowledge.
Yes.
And learning and
just situatedness. And
cultivation and development and, a virtue ethic where it's like you need a role model.
Yeah, you need images and that are full of life.
Yeah.
That's also something that I think is missing from a lot of Christianity. But
Jesus is supposed to be that image.
Yeah. But he's not full of I mean, people know him as at least like
punitive.
Well, the major image I have of him is on the cross.
Yeah.
And that's not that was he had a hard life. I mean, it was very admirable,
Yeah. Well, I think
I just mean it shouldn't be the only image.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the Logos and Jesus are often related. I mean, Jesus is the Word become flesh.
Yeah.
And that is apparently a new sort of development in the history of the universe and of consciousness, that the Word becomes flesh.
Yeah.
I think it's the Gospel of John, right? The Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Hildegard quotes that in the Book of Divine Works.
So what happens when the Logos becomes flesh? I guess that's a further, even deeper intimacy than the cosmic Logos. It's like it's anthropological in this new way. It's been anthropomorphized.
Yeah, the way that I think there's something pretty compelling about the way Rudolf Steiner presents it. It's like a climax, basically, in the morphology of evolution. If you look at his image of the evolution of consciousness, the U shape, it's at the very bottom.
Right, the turning point of time.
Yeah.
The Christ event.
The turning around, turning back around. It's kind of like a turning.
Yeah, I mean, and Christianity is often said to be this synthesis between Greek philosophy and Jewish religion. And I think maybe that's where it's the sense of sin as wrongdoing and sin as ignorance.
They
meld
weave together. Yeah, totally. I mean, as so many other, I guess, related like effort and grace.
Right.
I think that's related. That's like the kind of soteriological dimension of
because
polarity.
After the Christ event, then what the Jews had been saying about sin becomes true. Like the knowledge of what's good is love. We know it's love. The good is love.
Yeah.
That's sort of the revelation of Christ.
Yeah.
And after that point, I guess this is just maybe what Steiner would say, that the Logos has taken on a new form, and it's you no longer have the right to remain ignorant of it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's there for everyone, no matter what their context is, because it's human.
And it's not that this means you have to accept Jesus Christ or Christianity or anything like that.
Wake up to the God within you.
Yes. Yes.
Within and above.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's not...
It's the overdetermined.
Yes, exactly. It's not my Logos.
I'm not
or
God.
Your Logos. Not I, but the Christ in me.
Yeah, exactly.
As Paul put it.
It's that river running through.
Mm-hmm.